Hello, everybody. How are we? Robert, how are you? Rodrigo, the old school dial-up got you a little scared. Understandable. Thought your PC crashed. Oh, those were the days. Our kids will never know. Welcome, everybody. So, Alex, I see, yes, you were first in, ready to go. Thanks for joining. Wow, from Cuba. Very cool. Thanks for joining me. Link. So like always for these streams, this month though, I've got a bunch of other streams planned out. So there's gonna be some different ones throughout the month this July, but this one is still gonna be sticking with, in essence, Ask ZBrush Live. But I'm throwing a little extra twist in it. I'm going to use only this model to kind of answer some of the questions that have been coming through. So in essence, I'm going to show you how I built this guy. And for those that don't know what this is, okay, for 1 million points that mean absolutely nothing, right? This model is obviously from Star Wars, okay? So this is the mouse droid in the originals films. So going around in it. I'm going to frame myself a little bit better. The camera moved on me. There we go. Hold on. Just want to give myself a little bit more framing. The camera moved, of course, on me. There we go. Okay, so what I want to do with this is kind of recreate this and show you some of the techniques to do this, which in essence is going to answer the questions that have been coming through for the week. So again, for those that have never been here for this, this is a Ask ZBrush Live. So we take questions through our Twitter using the hashtag AskZBrush. So that's all you got to do, and then we see these questions coming through. And also, to be in all honesty and fairness, I also take questions that are coming through support, anytime I get emails. So there's things I'm just going to grab through all these channels that you have. And then, you know, we have Discord and everything. So there's a lot of places we're getting these questions to come through. How's it going, Blands? No, it's Robert. It's hashtag Ask ZBrush on Twitter. So here, I'll type it in for you so you have the exact, because I use this as a filter on Twitter. So it's very important you get it exactly like that, because I'm not looking for anything else but that. All right, Alex. Well, we'll see you later. Thanks for swinging by, though. The strange noise was dial-up. You're probably too young to know what that was. Yeah, that used to be how we get on the internet. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go through and talk about how I made this, and hopefully this is going to help you, Pierre, to understand the steps to going through this and something about making this. Okay. So let's do one thing first. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna just load kind of the final version. One of these is there we go. This is the final version, I think. Yeah, there we go. This is the final version. So let's kind of load this up as just kind of a reference for me. So I don't need the floor, so I'm gonna just grab a couple views of him. I only need really the front, the side, the back, and let's say a 3/4, right? Okay, so this is just personal preference for me. I'm going to change my document to appear black. Okay, and I'm going to say, all right, let's do an export. We can actually grab the doc if we want to as well. Okay, so I'm going to go in the texture here and then just do a grab doc. So we've got that view, and let's go to the front. Let's grab that dock, and let's go 3/4, and let's grab that dock as well. Okay. I don't know. I guess I'll take a back. I don't really think I need it. I think that's enough. I want to just have this as kind of referencing for me. So now these are in the texture palette, right? So I was grabbing the dock, so I was literally picking up the dock. Okay, so okay, so I will say let's add this image to Spotlight. So I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to add that to Spotlight. Let's take the 3/4, add that to Spotlight. And let's take a front view, we'll add that, and a back view, we'll add that. Okay, and then now these images are floating here in Spotlight. So I'm going to reorganize these so they're all sitting here. And let's up the opacity all the way so that they're fully in. Okay, and the reason why I changed my background to pure black is if you see when I click on any one of these images, you can kind of see, right? It's kind of now a cutout. It's masked out. So pure black is seen as transparent, right? So I'm just doing this as kind of just for me to have a little bit of a visual, personal spreadsheet of what this guy actually looks like. Okay, just so I always have it, because as I'm building here, we are going to lose, obviously, the model, because I'm going to start building the model again with you all. And I'm going to show you multiple ways to even bring in references and different ways to use references. So I'm just doing this more of a personal thing for me right now, and just so I always have it. And then as we're going along here in the stream, we always know what I'm actually creating. So we'll move that up. Let's actually size them down a little bit. I don't need them that big. I don't need to take up that much of my space. There we go. Okay, so again, by grabbing the document and having pure black, when I throw this in Spotlight, this is going to be, in essence, transparent, which is automatically giving me a cutout of the model. Okay? So for me, I love to use that as my personal reference. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to do when I build this is obviously go get actual references of the real mouse droid, right? So I have one of the best books you could honestly get, and right now, in the US, here's a link. This book's on sale. It's only $59 right now. People, this book swings to sometimes it's $500, $250. I've seen it all the way up to $1,000 in the US for this book. So the fact that it's $59 right now, if you're a Star Wars fan, number one, you like doing mech stuff or hard surface stuff, you need to get this book, okay? So I got the book physically here, and let me pull it up here now online as well, which I gave you guys the link. So here's just this book, the Blueprints book, is one of my favorite books, right? So I have it right here. It's oversized, it's massive, right? So you can see how big it is just from my hand. And I'm 6'6", so I got a long arm, right? So this is a big book. It's got every single thing you can think of from all first 6 films. And it was made by a gentleman that worked on the films. So he's got a ton of great stories and everything. Like, look, I just happened to open to the page about the X-Wing. Like, look at that. That's awesome. You can see kind of the process they went through. I'm building all the ships, the droids, the sets. That's what this book has. So as you guys can see right now, $59.16. I'm almost tempted to buy another one because mine got a little wet, and then today, pulling it off my shelf, I damaged it. I might actually just pick another one up. Like, for $59, like, that's crazy good deal. So, there you go. To me, this is a must-buy book. I have, like, for all my hard surface stuff, I have about 5 books that are must-buy books for me that I just keep pulling off the shelf. This is one of them. And I can't tell you how many Star Wars things I've done now where I pull that book off and I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so where did my pen go? All right, so let's look at, I pulled the image of the original drawing of the mouse droid from that book, right? And what we've seen them now, what we're looking at, it was very different in the very first drawing. Okay, so I'm gonna bring that in as a texture. So it's sitting right here. So here is the reference image that I'm going to use. And especially for the initial blocking out, trying to figure this guy out, okay, is going to be important. So this is answering the question, how to apply reference images with inside of ZBrush. Okay, so I just use Spotlight as an example along the top. Okay. Do you want to? Well, I can't. It's a big book. I can't really show you by every single page. It's large. It's a gigantic book. You could probably find a video on YouTube of somebody cycling through the book. It's too big, and you're just not going to be able to read it really good on the camera. I'd recommend just doing. Wow, 34. Wow, Robert, get on that. Right. So I would say just Google it. I know you'll probably find a YouTube video of someone flipping through the book. Honestly, here, I bet you. Let me see. I could probably find one. Star Wars. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. I'm sure somebody's done it. Everybody's done it. Here you go. Yeah, there's a ton here. Just if you Google it, there's a bunch of videos that you can use. So here is one for you, for the person that's asking, because me holding it up isn't going to give it justice. It's just called Star Wars. I gave you a link in the chat. So Star Wars Blueprint. That's the name of the book. Okay. You got it. Okay, so I'm going to bring this image in. And for me, for when I'm making something like this, that it's got to be, obviously, it's got to be real. It's got to look like the movie asset, of course, right? So I'm going to take the images. So I've got the image from the book. I just used my phone, popped a picture, sent it to my computer. So I'm going to go through the draw palette to add this as a reference. And there's a reason why I like doing it this way, right? So I'm going to come down here to the bottom menu, and I'm going to say, hey, let's take this image. I've got a side view and a front view. So in essence, I got like a left or right side and a front view. So let's start with the left and right side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my floor grid. Okay. So now my floor grid's on here. Let me change my document color back to a gray so you guys can see it. Okay. So you can see my floor grid is on now. And I'm just going to say now, okay, on the left and right, click on map 1, and you can see it opens the texture palette. And then I'm going to click on this, and then boom, the image plops into place. So there is the image that's literally from the book, right? That's what it looks like. Like that was the original drawings, right? Which is pretty cool. Like, see, and this is what this book's all about. It's showing you all views. Right, so we got a bottom view, we got a side view, and there's a couple other little images in the book too for him. But this is the only one I really want, because I want to get the general shape of him for the body. Okay, is what I'm looking for here. And then the rest of my references will be from up here, from what I've already built. Okay, that's kind of why I'm putting those in there. All right. So what I'm going to do now is, well, I'm going to start him with something, right? So let's just grab, I'm just going to right now just switch away from him and grab a cube. Okay. And in fact, this cube has like a pole on the top and the bottom. So I'm not going to use that cube. So I'm going to make this a polymesh. I'm going to hit W to click on my gizmo. And I'm actually going to use the cube that's in here. So there's a cube right here. So I'm going to click on that. And I'm actually going to get rid of the spans by using these cones, right? You can see I can get rid of the spans. And then this is just a 6-sided cube. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Something more like that, I guess. Okay? Now, what I want to do is take advantage of these images, all right? So, back to the draw palette. We have the ability to do things with the image, i.e. size it up, okay? We can move it, which is going to become very handy horizontally and vertically. We can rotate it. Maybe I didn't get the image quite straight, so I need to put a little bit of a rotation, right? Just a little bit of angle. You can rotate by 90 degrees, which comes in handy for us, okay? You can flip it. So if this is facing the wrong way, you can see that blue line right here at the bottom. Okay, that means that's forward Z space. So if I'm building this guy, I'd want him, the front end, to be facing forward Z. So this is important to have an understanding of this, okay? So that this image needs to be facing the right direction. Right now, this is facing the wrong direction, okay? So I'm going to go back to the draw. Okay, we're going to flip it again. And then this time, I'm going to click, oh, listen, we can be very cool and do, ooh, inverse. We're going to go and hit the adjust button this time. And now what it does is pull up the image for me to do some cropping. Okay, so I'm going to just crop this a little bit. Okay, and because this is really the only part of the image that I really care about, right? And I'm not going to build this part of him, so I'm going to get rid of that and just kind of crop him right about there. And say, okay, and then you can see the only thing we get now is that portion of the image, right? Okay, and so now I have that on a side view, and then I want a little bit view from the front. So same thing in the draw palette. I'm going to go front back, okay? So I'm going to hit map 1, and then just the same map, I'm going to throw it in here, okay? So now this I want for the front, right? So then I'm going to go back here and then do another adjust, right? And then now I want this, okay? I want this to be over here. We only need that. And about that. And hit OK. So now what we have here is some images here that's going to give us the general understanding. So you can see one image is larger than the other. Hence why I'm a big fan of this, is I can actually line these up a little bit better than what they are currently right now. And the reason why we have applied these to the grid is I can use the grid itself also as a way to me align the images. So as an example, if you look at the top part right here, right through here of this line, it's actually following the line of the grid right here. Right? So this line of the grid, can you guys see that? What if I do this? Let's see if that's better. Yeah, see that line right there where my brush icon is? So I'd want this image's top to sit at that line, right? So then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to resize the front view down. It's too big right now. Okay, and then I'm going to pull back a little bit so I can see that line that I'm trying to match to. Okay, scaling down. There. Okay. And then now, that is giving me a better reference. Now, the other thing that's very nice about using this, okay, to do referencing is when you scroll over the model, you'll see there's a shooting red line and a shooting blue line. Okay. So this is to help you also align the images and show you where this. So if I was to divide this up a little bit, let's just give this a lot more topology. You can see wherever I'm sitting at on the mesh right now, so there's a bunch more vertex points now. Wherever I'm sitting, it's showing you where that point is a relationship to all the images. In this case, I'm only using 2 images. I'm only using a side and a front image right now. Yes, yes, live booleans would be the best way to hollow out, but I'd also use live booleans with the create shell option, honestly. Okay, that's how I would go with that. So this, all right, and which I have covered in a past stream of mine. A couple weeks ago, I covered hollowing out. I would say about 3 weeks ago. There's a stream I did that's on the Fridays, so 3 weeks back on our channel. you can find it, and then I'm showing you how to hollow something out. All right, so that's what this is also very beneficial for, okay? The one other thing that can be nice for you, if you guys like this approach, so as an example, I'm going to undo, okay, this, because now I want to start matching this cube, right, to the reference images. And this is why I like, for something like this, I like to use a very low polygon, and it's going to go in to one of our next questions that came through. All right, so, but before I go into that, the one thing you got to understand when you're using this technique of reference images, there's a slider that's very important, which is this fill mode slider. So this is saying how much to fill the image into the mesh. So if I drop down to 2, you can see now you can't see through the topology, right? So anything from 0, okay, to 2, the mesh is now not transparent. The minute you put it on 3, the mesh becomes transparent, and then the 2 sliders here become alive. One slider controlling the mesh transparency, and the other slider controlling the image opacity, right? So this one is controlling the mesh, and then this one's controlling the image. Because maybe I don't need like this. Maybe it's too aggressive. Maybe I just need a general look of the image, right? From whatever view I'm looking at. So you have, again, these sliders to kind of give you a little bit of control. I like doing this because then you can clearly see with this box. Okay? You're too kind, Dern. So now this is a simple just, let's get the general shape bounding box of him now, right? So I want to now just kind of manipulate this with some masking. So because I'm using a cube that's only 6 faces, right? I only have 8 vertex points to play with, right? So it creates it really easy where I'm just doing unmasks, okay? And then now I'm just finding the general length of him. Okay, and I'm just clearing masks, right? And then this one I don't even have to mask. Let's just get that general shape in there. Okay, and then this is a great example. Robert, I don't know if you're asking or you're sharing it with somebody. But yes, you are good to go for what you're putting. Okay, so again, I'm just holding down control, but then you can see, look up here, right? My hand's not on the keyboard anymore. You guys don't have to hold the keyboard down once the brush is engaged. Okay, cool. Thanks, Robert. Once the brush is engaged, you guys don't have to keep holding. The benefit of that is spacebar will move it. But the other benefit, which is very near and dear to me, is the Alt key. Okay? So this is doing the opposite of masking. This is doing an unmask. Okay, so if we did this on a model with a little bit more polygons, here, we'll just turn the floor grid off. Sometimes you guys are probably wanting to do something like this, right? And get that box unmasked, and then on the other side, it's going to be the same on this sphere. Okay? Sorry. You might want to warn her, right? So this, okay, instead of doing this, right? You can see I'm not touching the keyboard right now. If you hold the Alt key instead, it gives me exactly that. Instead of doing the old way of, okay, I want some mask that looks like this, and then control and tapping to inverse it, I save myself time by just doing this and holding the Alt key, and I get that. It's less clicks. Granted, that other click is like maybe a second, but all that time adds up. And the more you can get things that we do on purpose inside of ZBrush, okay, it's all about trying to make us work as fast as we can. And this is why we have certain shortcuts the way we have the shortcuts, because it's just trying to find a way, how can I move quickly and use as many shortcuts possibly if I want to. All right? So going back to my cube, right, and turning my floor back on, that's all I was doing when I was resizing, was doing this. Okay? So there you go. This is a great way to bring some reference images in. So either I like using the spotlight and I like using this. There are many other ways to go about this. One thing that I also do want to show with this, which could be very, very cool. So let me save this out, which you can do, which is great. I'm going to save out this reference image. And in fact, I'm going to put it in my ZBrush space. So let me get to my program files, Pixologic. Okay, so I'm going in here. Okay, so I'm in the, right now I'm on the Windows side, right? So Windows, Program Files, Pixologic, ZBrush 2021. So there's a folder here called ZGrids. Okay, so I'm going to click this, and then I'm going to rename this one Mouse Droid. And then save it. Okay, so what's nice about that is now when I use Lightbox, okay, which is just the comma, kiki. For you 80s people, you'll know what I'm singing. Comma. Okay, it's the comma key, right? And then in here, there is a menu called Grids. And you can now see there is my grids saved out for this. Now, what I want to show for this, which can be really cool, all right, is there's two things that could benefit you here. So in the draw palette, all right, there is the ability to actually project the images onto your model. Okay? So this project mesh can actually project the image right on the model. Okay, so that's pretty cool to have this. Some people like this. So let's say even I'm gonna take this one more level. I'm gonna go back to my original mesh, which is this. Okay, this is the original. Right? So I've got the model in essence done. Right? So technically, what I could do, and here let's use skin shade 4. Okay. In fact, I don't know what's going on. Looks like I crashed. Don't know why that happened. Randomness. So I want to use the model, okay, itself as a way for a reference image. So this is, for me, a big thing. I like to, all of us do sketches and stuff. I like to use, in essence, ZBrush to sketch out quickly the ideas of what I'm trying to make, and then use it as the reference. Use the 3D model as the reference itself. Okay, so what I mean by that, my ZBrush is on the other side, okay, is this. I'm going to take this model, okay, and in the draw, again, we're using this model, right, referencing images from the book, but I'm going to say snap to grid, and what that does is actually take a snapshot of my model from every view and put it here. So if we go back to the cube, you can see my final model in every view. And you can see the grid is snapping to the size of the model. So I got back, I even got the bottom view, right? So in this case, I probably would want to make, he's pretty small, my final one that I made. So I'm going to turn on the gizmo. I'm going to turn on our little pizza boxes, and then I can make the whole thing larger. Right? And then now, again, if I go to draw, right? And I come in here and I say snap to grid, now I've got that model ready to go, and I can actually use the model itself as a way for referencing. So I'll do this a lot because I'll quickly, like in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, if I'm making something, use Dynamesh and really sketch it out very rough. But that helps me get my proportions down, and then I go and build the model. So this is a great example of using the floor grid. So again, it's in draw, okay, snap to grid. And then below that are controls. Snap to the mesh, snap to all, right? There are these controls of how it's snapping. Also, the grid itself is snapping. So there you go. This can be very handy. So there's another way for you guys to look at this. I'm going to load back my images here, okay, that I have. These are good enough for me. All right. So let's go about, again, and say, okay, we got a reference image here. Let's readjust the heights because I kind of readjusted my grid now. So let's readjust these again. Just get that general. And there's one thing I would say with imaging, like when you're going to use reference images, be careful. Don't, in some cases, marry yourself too much, right, to the image. What I mean by that, you can see obviously this model's symmetrical, but the image right now is not symmetrical. And you can see it's not even coming in perfectly straight. I just want the general shape of the mouse droid right now. So don't marry yourself to that image. Just using it as exactly what it means, a reference. Okay, so then this is going to now lead me into the next one, right? Which is using ZModeler now to build simple shapes and keeping, how do I start making this match to really start looking like the mouse droid? Okay, how am I going to start doing this, right? So there's going to be an easy way to go about this, and this is another reason why I'm using a block that's just 6 faces. I'm going to switch to my ZModeler, and I'm going to insert an edge loop that represents that, and I'm going to insert an edge loop that represents that, right? So now I've got these edge loops right here and here that represent where that model is actually going to have this base going around it, okay? So now I need to do the tapering on the bottom, right? And the tapering on the top as well. Okay, so you can obviously just mask out and get that taper. The thing you're going to have, though, is we need that taper not to start all the way out here. We need that taper to start in here, right? So for me, okay, it might make more sense, okay, to not put these 2 edge loops in right away, right? There's going to be several ways I can go about this. Okay, and it might make more sense, okay, to just actually, instead of matching this width, right, and matching this width, let's just match this taper first, right? And then now this has got to get tapered out here, right? And then now this, I'm just going to move this point and get it tapered in there. Right, and then now you'll need an edge loop here to give me this taper, this direction, right? And so forth and so on. However, what I did for him was, okay, let's add, again, those edges there and there. And now I'm actually going to get rid of and just only look at that portion of the model. Okay? Yes, Alex. Technically, you could use another subtool as the pivot point. Yes, that is possible. In fact, you know, that's a pretty good tangent question. Okay, so to your question that you're asking, there is a way. If I load a model with multiple subtools, okay, so i.e. in this, let's turn the floor grid off. So we're just looking at this, and let's say I want to use the glove. Right? Pivot here, right? So this is now the pivot point for the glove, right? If you turn this on, then everything's going to pivot around that. Okay? So you can see this pivot point is driving. So if I select now this, right? Because this is on, all the subtools are being used for the pivot point. Now, if I only want certain things pivoting, let's go back to the hand, okay? And now the only thing I want to maybe pivot around this point of the hand is actually just, let's say, the backpack, the t-shirt, and the vest, okay? So all I need to do is, you can see in the bottom left corner screen, the 2 buttons I'm holding down, which are Control-Shift, and I'm going to tap on that, tap on the backpack, and tap on the shirt. So you can see, even though I have the glove selected as my subtool, it's not selected in this scenario. So when I start rotating, you can see these are actually rotating around the pivot point of the glove. And then there are only things that are rotating around that area. Okay, and then of course if you're moving, right, that's just regular move. Right, and then scaling, you see they're scaling where that pivot point of the gizmo is. So you can see that's why it's kind of moving away or moving in, because the pivot point is nowhere near the actual meshes themselves. Okay, no, that can't be used with array. Array mesh is a whole nother system. Array mesh is not using the gizmo. It's got its own pivot point. And it's not about, an array mesh isn't using the mesh itself as the pivot point. It's using the world. The entire world, you can have a pivot point wherever you want. Okay? Okay? As far as the pivot point, Morpheus, as far as your question goes, this is just a gizmo that it can be moved everywhere, anywhere. This is not the interest of the model mesh itself. Okay? And I don't know how you're going in Unreal and Blender. Okay? So where it sits in the world, this model is sitting right here in the world. And then I don't know what file extension you're exporting. So all those things come into play, depending on, there are settings that you can do with certain extensions to have the model be in a different point in space. But this model, as an example, is sitting dead center. And I know that because of this right here is the center of the world. So this model is sitting dead center. So they would plop in the same way in all the other applications, as long as you're rendering, I mean, as long as you're building this way. Okay? No, Alex. I'm not sure what you're trying to get to. No. An array mesh does not depend upon other subtools. Array mesh is subtool specific. So whatever that array mesh is doing, that's what you want to. You can't snap the array mesh of one subtool on another subtool. It doesn't work that way. No, it doesn't work that way. Maybe near the end we can get to and I can talk about that, okay? And show you some things. Okay, so back to what I'm making here. All right. So the reason why this way could be beneficial for us all is I now can actually, looking at the top part, I'm going to hold the space bar, and instead of creating edge loops, I'm going to do an inset. Okay? And so now this is just going to create that shape there for me, right? And then down at the bottom, right, can do the same thing. And I just tap, and now I got both of these insets, right? And then now if I switch to QMesh polygroup all, I can build out this portion, right? If I hold the shift key, I get this. If I don't hold the shift key, I can do this. And now what I have here is the ability to now, okay, this, and then this needs to now, this, only this gives me this taper. And then now this side gives me that taper. And then this, the benefit to this is we're low polygon. And I'm gonna go with that. And then I'm going to give it a taper there. Right there. And then this one's tapering to there. And then you can see the bottom part of him has a different type of tapering. So I'm going to unmask these points now, right here. And I'm going to move those to match more there. And again, these ones here, move to match there. Right? So then this is giving me, from that view, that's giving me the shape more that I'd be looking for from him. Man, that one's, I don't like how much I moved that one. That one's a little too much for me. I'm going to go right about there. And the front one I think is a little too much too. So I'm going to just dial it back a little bit. Okay, something like this. Okay, there we go. Now from this view, we need the other tapers, right? So we need this taper, okay, to come out actually these. Now need to spread out this direction. So right there. And then these points along here need to come out more there. And then this direction come in there. Something more like that. Right? And then now what we have here, if I turn the floor off, is our simple base here. Okay? Hold on, I'm just catching up on a question. PR freelance. How do you explain all these shortcuts? What do you mean, how do I explain them? You mean when I'm teaching them? How do I explain them? Is that what you're asking? Well, the masking one that I'm using, right? It's just control, and then see, I'm not holding my hand on the keyboard. This is Lisa Needs Braces combined with a look up here, right? So that allows me spacebar to move, because if I want to move, spacebar. Excuse me. And then the Alt key makes it a white box, as in unmask. And so anything in the box stays unmasked. Everything else gets masked. Right? So this is how I would start to teach this. Okay? And then clearing a mask is holding control, click and dragging. Inversing a mask is holding control and tap. Like, this is just stuff you got to memorize that you'll remember once you start going. The more you use anything, the easier it all comes too. So now what I want to do now is I want to turn on dynamic subdiv. So I'm going to hit the D key for dynamic. And I'm going to say, yeah, always turn, when I hit the D key, if there are no subdivision levels, go ahead and do that. And well, beautiful. It's exactly like it. It's marvelous. It's just gorgeous. Okay? So this, okay? Robert, okay. Switch over to YouTube. Okay, so this is obviously not working. So what I'm going to do is in geometry, I'm going to go to crease, and I'm just going to right now just crease all. So it gives me back this general shape of him again. Okay? And now what I'm going to do is, this is really important for me when I'm using ZModeler and I'm going about this in the way that I'm going about it, right? Is I want this ability to actually not keep it looking like this. I do want it to smooth, right? That we have like this, where it's kind of starting to smooth the mesh, but I need to keep this general shape. So for me, I'm going to open up both these menus. I've turned on dynamic with the D key. That's what this does. Okay? And now I've creased all edges. And so what I want to tell ZBrush is, let's actually drop the crease level down to 2. This is just my personal go-to. Right? And then in the smoothing of how many times I want to ask ZBrush, hey, how many subdivision levels do I want to look at in this dynamic subdivisions? Okay, and right now it's 2. The minute I turn this up to 3, you're going to see the shape start changing. So I'm going to turn off the polyframe. Then I'm going to go to 4. Then I can go to 5. And you can see this is starting to give a little bit more, right, of the roundness that's in the original piece, right? It's starting to give, I need some roundness on the top and on the corners. And there needs to be a subtle roundness right through here. Okay? So this is now where I start to take advantage of the ability of having dynamic subdivs with something like ZModeler. So what I mean by that is right now, okay, I'm getting some softness to him, some roundness in essence, but it's not giving me exactly what I want, right? I'm not getting the perfect look, right? So what I'm going to do now is use a combination of throwing in some extra edge loops with that crease level. So I'm now telling ZBrush, that crease level is telling ZBrush, only for 2 subdivision levels do you want to maintain the sharpness, right? And right now my dynamic is doing 5 subdivision levels. So in essence, the creasing is only maintained for 2 subdivision levels. And then after that, ignore the creasing and then just divide the mesh. So I'm a big fan of creasing because I don't like to add a ton of edge loops to get my hard surfacing. I'm not, that's not me. I don't usually do that. Okay, for me personally. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let's first start getting this piece right. Okay, so let's go ahead and insert multiple edge loops. Okay, so I'm just going to click on this edge here, and then this is the beauty of dynamics. I can see even what is happening to these edges right there, right? So you can see how sharp it's getting because there's edge loops. There's more edge loops across here. Okay, so I'm going to, I think this gap's pretty good. And then I'm going to tap the Alt key. Every time I tap the Alt key, you can see it's changing the polygroups of the new edge looping that I'm drawing out, which is super important, people. Okay, so that's good. Then I'm going to say Q mesh, right? Polygroup all, and I'm going to push this in. And let's go crease all. And then now you got something like that starting to happen. Right? And then I'm going to adjust. I don't like the gap here. And again, using just simple masking, keeping it simple right now. You can see how I did that. I just unmasked again. And I moved my gizmo to the center of the unmasked points with their little bing MapQuest old school thing. And then see, I can move and change this gap on the fly if I want to. Right? This is a way that I can do this. Now, if you don't want to use ZModeler, okay, there is another way to do this and get that gap. So instead of doing the doing the edge loop, multiple edge loop with ZModeler and doing some masking, adjusting, okay, there is also in the gizmo, let's not forget, okay, the gizmo itself has some deformers. Okay, so right here, I can click on this gear, and there are a bunch of other deformers here. And again, this can be very beneficial for low polygon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use slice. Okay, and what this is doing is going to make a slice in the mesh. All right, so there's a blue dot in the middle, okay, and then there's some cones up here. So you have symmetry, the creasing, you have an inflate, you have slice width. So this, okay, is going to allow me to do something like this. So I don't want it symmetrical, but I want to play, see, with this width. So you can even do it this way, where this orange cone, okay, automatically gives me two slices. Okay, now this is also moving the model up, down like this, right? So this is now a way of, I can just visually, I can see that and give me that width that I'm really looking for. Okay. Oh, really? I look a little bit like Tony Hawk? No way. I've never had that one before. Okay, so that is one way to do it. Okay, another way to go about this, because I'm all about trying to show you guys more than one way to do things. Okay, so I'm going to hold down Control and Shift. And again, look at the bottom left. You guys can see what I'm holding down key-wise. I'm going to switch to Slice Curve. Okay, this is going to allow me to do something like that. I can slice in, and what it is adding an edge loop, right? And it's also creating a new polygroup for me automatically. What I'm going to do now is add something to this. Okay, I'm going to now say, all right, let's use my brush size and let's use B radius. Okay, my new in-house nickname. And then this is now going to give me, I can come right here and say right there, and now I get the double slice, see? And I'm getting new polygroups right out the gate. So with one action, right, I'm getting both things that I was actually looking for. I was looking for a slice with a certain height and new polygroups right out the bat. So that brush is giving me everything I need. I have control of getting two slices. My brush size controls the width of those slices. So if I was going with a bigger brush size like this, and if I do this same thing, you notice see the slices weight here and right there. If I go with a smaller brush size like I did, and I'm going to turn off dynamic and say boom, you can see that is giving this. So I'm going to say I want probably half that. So I want around that size. And then there you go. And now I'm going to say crease all. I'm going to go back, and then I'm in ZModeler. And then now I can push this in, crease all, and get to the same result. Okay, so there's just a lot of ways to do this. Okay. So it's based on the inner circle, not the outer. The outer circle of your draw, that's your focal shift. That's this. The middle circle is actually your actual draw size. Well, the whole thing, the whole thing is your draw size, but when you're sculpting, that middle circle is really where the most intensity is going to happen, and then it rolls off to your focal shift, right? So if you're looking at it in this sense, right, if you look at this and we draw across, you can see right here it's using the inner circle. Because this is slicing. We're making new topology. There's no kind of make a new slice. It's a slice. So there is no focal shift for the slice brush. It wouldn't make any sense. So there's no fall off happening with the slicing. It's slice, right? So it's using the middle circle to establish the height between the two slices. And let's not forget, you need to hold down Control and Spacebar and turn on B radius, which is actually found in the brush palette at the bottom here. There's clip brush modifiers. There it is in the brush palette. So even if you can't remember that, there you go, right? And so now I start going, okay, this is starting to look good, right? I'm going to also now say, I need some more edge loops now for sure. So I want along the top, I'm just going to do a single insert edge loop, and I want that to be a little bit more tighter there. Okay, that's a little bit closer. Okay, this way, I'm going to go ahead and actually make my life easy. I'm just going to do a mirror and weld along the X. That's tightening up that corner and that corner for me. And if I want to still tighten it up a little bit more, okay, this is where then I say, okay, let's add an edge loop that way, and let's add an edge loop that way. And so now this is the shape I start to form for my model. Now, okay, looking again at the original, right? So here's the original. I want a slight little, right? I want a little bit of slow blending in from the top part to the bottom part. Same thing down here. I don't want it really sharp right there. Okay? That's not what I'm looking for, right? So here we'll snapshot just a view of that so we have it. Okay? So what I'm going to do is right now, it's kind of nice in here, but if I want a bigger, instead of it doing this and slowly going into that angle, if you look at my camera, right, I want maybe a more drastic turn in that profile, right? And I'm talking about this profile going into here, right? So you can see that part right there. If I want to play with that a little bit, that's actually easy to do. When I hold space, I get my quick pen. There's no space bar. It's not space bar. You're talking about the slicing. Robert, you got to hold down Control and Shift to get that brush. It's not space bar. Yes. And then you click on the brush icon, and then you'll have a bunch of other brushes here. Okay? So what I can do is right here, I can say, how about we uncrease those edges, and you can see how drastic now this change, okay, is happening. But then this is the beauty of dynamic subdiv, low polygon, Z modeling. I can now play with that by just adding an edge loop. And then because I'm dynamic, I can watch that transition change for me. Like I'm visually looking at that transition and deciding where I want that transition to be. And then even along this direction, that's kind of why I did the inset, because now I got an edge looping around from top view around the green. So now I can, right, even do this direction as well to tighten that right there if I want to. right? So now I got an edge loop there and an edge loop there. So if we eliminate that edge loop, you can see that profile that's starting to happen there. If I now just throw it, you can see how much you can play with that profile. And this is why I like dynamic. I can kind of watch that. And then you can say, okay, and then now down here, let's do the same thing down here. I'm going to uncrease those. And let's insert there. And then let's also do an insert here and do something more like that. And then there. I now have a combination of using creasing with me controlling kind of my edge loop, right? And now you can see we've got the simple body of the mouse droid, right? Simple, okay, that we have here now. Not difficult, but it's the process and idea. The benefit then is like even this kind of a thing, right? I want to manipulate these edges. Like I don't like the width that's happening in here. Okay. So I might want to take these edges along here and even play with those. Okay. So something like unmasking those. Right. And then so if you look, this is what I'm talking about. This right here. Right. So this is stretching though. Okay, if you're grabbing the gizmo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the deformer. Okay, number one, I'm going to say this needs to be symmetrical along the X. So that's why now I only get these dots. And then now this is about unmasking those points. And as I pull on these points, see it's pulling on the other ones. Right, and then now you can see kind of, I can even play with that profile from the top. Right? And then there you go. So there's my base body for him. Yes, B radius works with trim. People also don't forget, since we're talking about, look, this is definitely people. This is Elisa needs braces. Okay? And get ready for it. Everyone ready for that person that has their wife. Tell her to be prepared. Look up here. Look at me. Okay? Don't forget, this B radius is going to work with the clips. Okay? So it's going to clip, right? It's going to work that way with clips. It's going to work with the slicing. And it's going to work with the trims. And also, if I hold the Alt key with the trims, I cut out like that if I want to. Right? But what I also want you guys to get, right, is that these brushes, right? So there's rectangle clip. People, you can also switch to lasso and lasso these as well. So if I turn off the B radius, here I'm lassoing clip brush, right? So same thing if I go to any one of the slices and I change it to slice, you can even slice based upon a lasso. Right? Just opens up your world even. Jared, you're back in here. Okay, we just didn't make the brush for it, but the stroke's available. This is, and I guess this is also why, guys, we make so many of the brushes. And in all fairness, why we have so many brushes. Because there are things that we do, and then you can do other things with them, but you guys aren't going to know unless we make the brush. So this is why the brush palette is as big as it is, because sometimes some of the brushes we need to make, okay, to do it. Thanks, Jared. Okay. So this is big. And then honestly, for me, one of the hidden gems for slicing that I really love, that saves my butt all the time, honestly, is using just straight up masking. Here, we'll divide this up. Let's get a little more density. Like this one for me is the big one. Right? And Mr. Sanson, this is going to be repetitive since you've been in here several times. Like this for me is the big one. Boom, slicing. Right? I just sliced out the word high. Right? So I used masking to control where I slice. So instead of using like camera plane dependent with a curve or a lasso, I'm just by hand drawing this out. Okay? And then for me, this is a big one. You gotta, guys, you gotta remember, you can use alphas, right? There's nothing stopping me from going here and saying mask, square, and then grabbing now an alpha on here and saying star, draw out a star, boom. And I can even sharpen that, right? And then bam. We've got a sliced star shape, right? From the mask. Okay? So, that's just, it's a nice little hidden gem that, again, is really nice, especially if you're a hard surface person. Okay, this comes in really handy. And all I'm doing is I'm using the shortcut, which you guys can see bottom left. Okay? It's not Control W, Robert, no. Right? You can see the bottom left. There. You guys see it? Control Shift E as an edge loop. So where that is in the edge loop. It's this button right here, okay, which is your edge loop mask border. Since we're talking about this. And then you're going to get not only a slice, okay, and I've been, here, I did a lot of them because I was holding it down so you guys could see it. So I did several of them. Oh my God. How many did I do here? Let's just go this way. There we go. There. Okay. So there you go. It's a good one. It's a one that I like. Okay. So there you go. There's some tangent. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. Okay. Let's move on to this question. How can I use Nanomesh to create a repeating pattern? Guys, this is perfect. This model was like the perfection of Nanomesh. So I'm talking about all these repeating chips that's on the side of him. All right, and I'm going to show you the approach and how I went about this. So now that I've got the base body of my mouse droid, I now need to create that side panel for him, right? And that panel needs to be sitting right on the sides, like either side, right? Nano, right? Thank you. So there are several ways I can go about doing this, okay? Since I already have this angle, why not just reuse it, right? So some of you are probably aware of that when you're Q meshing, you can rip off a face, right? So that face is already taking on the angle that I want right here, right? Makes sense. Why not just use it to my benefit? Okay. So there's multiple ways we can go about this, in all honesty. Okay. So again, we can rip off Q mesh and hold control. We'll rip it off. Okay. Or why not just, and this is something that I think, okay, that everyone needs to put their head around a little bit. I tend to reuse the mesh that I'm building something to build something on top of. Hence, this is a great example for this. I'm actually here, so let's just call this droid body, and I'm just going to now duplicate the droid body and rename this side panel. Okay, and now I'm going to turn off the main one, and all I really care about is honestly getting a face through here. Okay, so I would say I need a face. All right, so let's do this. Let's unmask those, and I'm actually going to use, here's another great way for you guys to even use the clip curve. I want this to be straight, so I'm going to use the clip curve to straighten that line in the topology. And I want it probably to live right about there for that one. Okay, and then here, let's just do the masking this way, not creasing. Let's do mask complete edge loop. I'll inverse that, and then now let's do some clipping. And then now let's move this, I'd say right about there. Looks to be good. So what I'm doing is I am creating that shape, this. I'm creating that base shape for this right now. Okay, so that's good. All right, and I don't need this edge loop or this edge loop. And the only thing I need is that face right there. And then on the other side, the exact same thing. And so this face is taking on the angle of the body that I want, right? And now it's perfectly straight and perfectly straight, right? So I just use clipping to straighten low polygon modeling too. I do this quite a bit. I'll use that clip brush to straighten things out. Let's not also forget, people, that if I also could do, this is like old school, like the days of me working in Maya as well, is if you have something like this, right? You guys can also do this, right? Unmask all of those points. Let's recenter the gizmo, right? And if I want to, tap on the exact point I want, and then use this blue, right? Square in this case, and you can see the points in the bottom are moving to be aligned where the gizmo is, right? So this is just old school days tricks, right? So you guys can do that. Or like I said, I tend to also use that clipping brush to straighten just low polygon stuff out too. Okay, does that make sense? So now I have this. The only thing I really care about is these faces. I don't care about anything else. So I'm going to get rid of everything now. Okay, go to geometry. I'm going to modify my topology. I want to change that topology up and delete hidden. And so now I've got this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just crease all my edges so they're all creased right out the gate. Right, and then now let's turn my body back on. And then now this is what we have. We've got this surface sitting right here. Okay, and then now I want a little bit of adjustment through here. Okay, so I got this going all the way to the top. I don't really want that. So this is something, here's another little trick for you all that I love to do, especially low polygon, right? If I now want to move this edge down the line a little bit, this is not a good decision, what I just did. Because what that did is just see it move the face off the plane of the model. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to move those vertex points along the angle plane, right? So I can use the gizmo for that by doing this. Hold the Alt key, snap on like the bottom point, and then point to the top point. And you'll see the arrow aligns along the plane, okay? And then now I'm going to turn on symmetry, and I'm going to make sure local symmetry is on. And then now you can see when I adjust this with the arrow, okay, if I turn off solo, you can see that plane is staying where I need it to be. It's not going inside the model, right? I want a little bit of space at the top. For me, I'm going to inverse my mask now and put a little space on the bottom. And then there you go, right? I use that all the time. Having the ability for us to snap our gizmo to a vertex point, have a point to another vertex point, and then move edges. I'm sure you guys have ran into this where you have models all over the axis, all over the place. And now you want to, like even just taking it as an example, right? Think about it even in this context, okay? Let's grab brush, insert. Let's grab this primitive. And let's say you've got like a cylinder, okay? And I do this. And then let's say this cylinder is now sitting like this, right? And now you want to go, later on in the model, you're like, oh, that's not working for me. This length of this cylinder is not working. This is where that gizmo play comes into play. It can be very useful, right? So then I can say, what's important to me are these faces. So I'm going to unmask those. And then now Alt click, and now I can move this direction, right? But if I'm soloing it out, what I can also do, Alt, and see I can move this to snap and then move that, right? And then the benefit of this too is I'm snapped down at the bottom of the cylinder. You see that? If I now use the square, Notice the bottom doesn't move. This is just me taking advantage of low polygon with a gizmo, right? This gizmo is sitting on the same plane of these faces, so these faces do not move. There are plenty of times where I just want to change the size, but I don't want the original sitting point to move. If right? I just want this, right? And then in some cases, I don't want even the gizmo to move, so I'll use scaling. Okay, so again, holding the Alt key and tapping on any vertex point is going to align the gizmo to that point's normal. Okay, and it's automatically aligned. So taking that advantage of that, you can also hold the Alt key, click on a point. If you keep moving your hand, that crosshair now, that white crosshaired icon, is looking for another vertex point. So if I go to another vertex, boom, you'll see that the green arrow snaps and points towards the vertex points that I'm clicking at. So obviously, if I want to go along this exact edge, I would click on this point up here, and you can see that arrow is aligned exactly along that edge. Okay? The crosshair's telling the gizmo where to look at, and because the crosshairs can see vertex points, it can snap to those points. That's what it's doing. Okay? There you go. Right? So, again, just simple low polygon stuff taking advantage of this, all right? So again, okay, that's good. All right, and then now let's go ahead, ZModeler. Let's Q-mesh a single polygon. Let's give this a little thickness here. Okay, just a little bit of thickness. And then I'm also going to have this push in just a little bit here because I want it to overlap with the surface, because when I'm done, I want to 3D print this as an example. I want everything to weld together, so I'm going to create overlapping topology. All right, Robert, I'm glad this stuff's helping. All right, so again, I'm on local symmetry. Again, looking at the floor along the Z, okay? I'm going to now let's do a mirror and weld along the Z. And then that way I get center point dead center for this, because now I want to do this part next as an example, okay? So then I'm going to go, all right, let's insert an edge loop, a single edge loop. Let's go X, and let's do Z. So now I'm creating edge loops on both sides. I'm going to say about there's good for me. Let's say right about there. Okay. And then now here, I'm going to hold the space bar to switch to multiple edge loops because I'm hovering over the edge. Okay. And then now I'm going to say I want this to have 3 portions to this. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to change the polygrouping to be very different. So there was my 3. So I'm looking at the blues, right? So these blue. So I got a blue, green, blue, right? And now I'm going to take the blue, and in here I'm going to solo this out. This is an important thing here, people. This is another one of these. Okay? At least it needs braces. Okay? So this polygroup, this blue one, is what I want to pull out now. But that polygroup's being used on all sides, right? And on different edges. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell ZBrush, let's Q-mesh this. Okay, so spacebar, let's take 2 things in effect here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want the flat surface line. So all the polygons are on the flat plane of this. So that's what flat island is. But then what I also want to take in effect is also look at the polygrouping. If I just do flat island, this is what happens. That's not what I want. Okay, so what I want is flat with polygrouping. So now when I click on this blue, and I'm going to change the polygrouping again, this is what I get. And then you can see only those are moving. And now I've got that. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead now and crease it all. Turn on my dynamic so I can start seeing what this starts to look like smooth. And again, I've got my crease level at 2. And I've got my smoothness. I'm going to put it at 4. 4 is enough for this guy. And there you have it. Perfecto. Perfecto. Okay. Robert, you're looking for a job? Is that what you're asking? Go ahead, Ibram. What's your question? Throw it up there. I'll keep an eye out for it. All right, so there you go. That's this outlining. So in essence, what I'm doing, again, looking at the final, right? I'm doing this portion right here. That's what I'm doing right now. Okay, and then now here's where we need to start prepping this for nano. Nano, nano, nano. Nano, nano, nano. Okay, and there's a reason why I did the steps that I did, because this part in here now, I want to set up some nano meshing. Okay, so I want equal distant things happening here. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is delete this inner edge loop now. I don't want it anymore. Okay, and I'm going to tell ZBrush, all right then, let's go ahead and let's add some edge looping between this edge and this edge, right? So let's do, again, multiple edge loops. Right, but this time, I'm not going to change the polygrouping. So I'm going to turn that polygrouping off. Okay? Let me show this, and then I'll come to your question. All right? So now, I'm going to go, I want, let's say about, honestly, what I did is I counted the rows. I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So I can just go and say 8 specific and tap. There's 8 rows that way. And then I wanted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And if I remember right, this is the exact number in the real film, right? So then I just went this, and then I changed this to 12, and then just tapped. And then this is what I got. Okay? So this is giving me what I'm looking for to have these repeating items in there. Okay, and then I'm going to actually even stretch this out a little bit more, like that. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger, give it a little more volume. Okay, and then this is what we've got now. And so when I look at this divided, here's what we have, right? We've got this side panel. Okay, and now I've got these repeating parts. Okay, so now what I want to start doing are all these chips. This is where nano, nano, nano is going to come in play for me. Okay, so I want to set this, I'm setting this mesh up for nano is what I'm doing, right? That's what I'm looking for here, right? And then, you know what? Here's another thing that you guys can do. Here's a very important thing about this snapping thing I'm giving you guys with this gizmo thing. Here, I'm just going to delete the actual one side here. I only need the one side. Okay, here's another important cool thing. That when you're holding the Alt key, right, and you're doing this, this is aligning the gizmo this way. You know what it's also aligning? Your deformers. Right? So I can actually click deformer, and you can see this is aligned this way. And now I can say symmetrically this way, right? And then I'm going to say only the points like this. And then now, see these points up here? Look, I can readjust this even that way. Right? So if you're looking, I can do this and kind of readjust things also. And then I could go this route and make them wider, make them shorter. And I know this is staying along the plane that I need it to because of the gizmo placement. Just saying, just another thing for us to do here, right? I'm going to put a little bit more, yeah, something more like that. Okay? just another example of using that gizmo ability to snap. Okay. And then now the next thing I want to do is here, we can mirror weld this over now along the X, so we got both. Okay, and now the next thing I want to do is change this polygroup. Okay, so I'm gonna hold the space bar while I'm in ZModeler, polygroup. Okay, I'm gonna say flat island, and then click, and see I get new polygroup. So I'll just change this to a polygroup that works for me. And so all those faces now, see, have a new polygroup. It's going to be important for me for nano, 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 right? Okay, so let's put this back on dynamic subdiv now. Let's make sure this is on dynamic subdiv. And there we have it. Okay, and actually, I'm going to repeat even what I did. Okay, let's solo this out so you guys can see this. Right now, we don't need along the Z anymore. I want even these to be a different polygroup, actually. I want something like that instead. Because you can see it, I want to put like little screws along the top there. And if you want to do another one, you can just, if you want that to be bigger like that, you can make it bigger like that. Okay? So, because this purple is going to be very important to me. Okay? So, and I'm going to show you now how I can add multiple different nanos to the same surface. Okay, so before I do that, let me go back to your question. What's your question? How do I fix the size of standard default standard brush with a fish scale alpha so that I can place it wherever I want but keep same size and angle? Drag rec, drag dot. Doesn't work. Are you trying to do fish scales? Wait, hold on. Are you trying to roll them out? Are you trying to just drag it out and have that work for you? Your question has multiple answers. How do I fix the size of standard default standard brush with a fish scale alpha so that I can place it wherever I want but keep same size, same angle? I'm assuming like there's already here, I can grab a brush that is fish scales. So here, there's scales. Here's a fish scale one right here. Okay, and then let me go to a mesh here. Let's go to this cube, make this a polish. Let's divide this up. Right, and then so this brush is rolling the fish scales on itself. So I'm going to need to... So we need to... It looks like the alpha. I'm going to rotate it. Looks like this one might be broken. Looks like some settings have changed. So I'm assuming you're talking about this and you want this to be the same size. So let me turn off the roll. Let me back to this. Have no roll. The roll is off. Whoops. Huh. That's my problem, is the roll is off. I have to go fix this brush. So if you're trying to do the same size, like scales, and you're trying to say you're trying to do this, where you're trying to just drag that out and do something like this. And I'll do 100% something like that. Right? If you want the same thing somewhere else, you can do that if that's what you're looking to do. Right? So when you're drawing this out, if I want that same thing somewhere else, I can do that. Okay, so I can do this, and then go over here, and then click here, and then draw it out again. And then go here, and then draw it out again. I would need to see what you're trying to do, though, to really answer your question. So you're better off sending that into support so we can see what you're trying to do and see what brush you're trying to make and what you're trying to do. Okay? That would be the better way. I need to see what you're doing. I am sending Mario Brothers. That's right. Justo. Is there a way to instantly deselect previously moved subtools when moving multiple subtools? Wait, hold on. It just went out. I need to unclick the old, then click the new ones. Well, honestly, Justo, folders. Folders is going to be your best thing. It's going to be your best thing to use because then you can unselect and deselect with folders. No, you have to go and select them. You can also use, though, you don't have to click on every single subtool when you're doing this. Okay, so when you're using this gizmo option, right, to do, when you're doing this and you have this on, right, you're talking about like doing this and you got to sit there and click them all. You don't have to do that. You can just drag out and then there. The only thing now selected are the glove and the wristband. And if I want to add, now let's say this, I can do this and see it added the body, the knee pads, and the boots with the glove and the wristband. So it's a combination. You can do Control-Shift click on each subtool, or you can just use the box, right, to add them to the existing piece that you want. So you can do that. But honestly, folders is also the best way to go about this. Abram, I don't understand what you're saying. Each time it needs to be adjusted, honestly. I don't know what you're asking. And again, I might need to see what you're doing because what you're trying to do might not be the right technique. Okay, so it might be Spotlight might be better to do what you're trying to do, or use Noisemaker might be better. That's why I'm saying you're better off sending it in because the approach you're taking might not be the right approach for what you're trying to do. Okay. Justo, does that help you understand that maybe? And then what I mean by foldering is if we make a folder for him, right? Whatever's in folders. So if we make a couple folders here, this is why I also like to use folders a lot for me. Right? This now, looking, I've got 3 folders, right? I can actually click the gear and say transpose set, right? And see now all that part of the folder is ready to go. Then I can click the gear on the first folder and say transpose add. And now see it's moving folder 1 and folder 3 as a unit. And if I want to stop moving what's in folder 1, but still want to continue moving around and rotating around what's in folder 3, I come back to the gear and I say transpose sub. And now I'm back to only folder 3. Okay? Robert, yeah, you can look at smooth normals, but we're a sculpting application. We're about going to millions of polygons. In essence, dynamic subdiv is doing a little bit of that. Okay, but yeah, you can look at smooth normals if you want to, but we're a sculpting application. That's not what you'd want to do. You'd want to be dividing up and sculpting on something. Because if you're looking at a smooth surface, you're just looking at smooth normals of something that's not high enough polygon count. Okay? So it's better just divide, right? So even if you're looking at his body, it's very faceted. So if you want to look at smooth normals, you can come up here and turn quick off, right? So that's quick 3D editing. And then down in the display properties, okay, there's a smoothness right here. So see, there's, in essence, smooth normals. Right? So you can, but I never do this. Never. It just, I don't need to. I have dynamic subdiv, right? I can, or just divide up. And then it's going to be smooth. And then I need to get down to lower again. I just walk back down. I walk back up. Walk back down. Right? So That would be the way I go about doing that. Okay, so back to this. All right, so I'm building this out, and now I need to make pieces here, right? So the first one is I want to make some holes through here, okay? So I'm going to just insert now. Let's take this brush, which is an insert mesh brush of just geometrical shapes. I'm going to go here to the brush palette, and this time I'm going to say create, and I'm going to tell it to create a nano mesh, right? Brush. So I'm going to click that. So what I've done now is I converted, in essence, made a new ZModeler brush. So there's actually two now. So if I hit the B key, here, let me go up higher. There's the ZModeler now that I have. You see it says the number 14 here. And then the original ZModeler right here, it says the 1. So I've created two ZModeler brushes. So when you create a nano, we're creating another ZModeler brush, okay? That's in essence your custom brush. And so this one's got the 14 shapes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this cylinder shape, okay? And I don't even need symmetry now. And I'm going to say this purple one, insert nano, but let's only do it along the polygroup that I'm going to click on, which in this case is going to be the purple, right? Okay, so now I can click on any one of these and drag out, and I get my cylinders. And you see that changed the purple polygroup to this blue because now that blue polygroup is hosting a cylinder. Okay, and so this is a nano. So this is an instancing system. So the beauty of this, people, the beautiful thing about this is we've got a lot of abilities here now. I can even say, let's copy the blue and put it there, put it there, put it there, put it there. Or opposite, I want to get rid of the blues here and maybe make a completely different looking pattern, right? So I can actually paint with different polygroups. And you can see those cylinders are being deleted there. They're not really being deleted. What's happening is, again, the nanomesh, which in this case, the nanomesh is this cylinder I drew on, is being controlled by now that blue polygroup. Okay? And so now I can copy and paste polygroups with ZModeler by holding the Alt key, tapping on the blue, it'll change to white, take your finger off the Alt, and switch to Shift. And you guys can see, let me do it again. Again, look in the bottom corner here, people. I'm going to go as slow as I can above the Pixologic logo. You can see the keys that I'm clicking, right? Alt, tapping. I'm still holding Alt, letting go of Alt, switching to Shift. Okay, and then now, see, I'm just continuing to paint with the blue. So if I want to now get that red back, hold Alt, boom, Shift, and now just go across, and I can let go of the keyboard, and now I got red. Right? So there you go. So now I have this cylinder. And then this cylinder is driven by the blue on both sides. So what I want to do is start creating these hole shapes. So number one, okay, this nano needs a little bit more to it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, all right, where do I want this to sit in Z offset space? Right? I don't want this to hover over the blue. I'm just going to go to 0. Right? So it's a little bit there. Okay? Where I want that. And then now I'm going to say, you know what? I want more than one of these. Okay? So I'm going to tile these, right, across either horizontal or vertical. So I just want 2 of them like this. Okay? And then I want these to have a different type of gap to them. So I'm going to switch from this grid, and I'm going to try different ways to go about this. Okay? So these are just different ways to go and apply this. Right? So you see there's checkered even, right? There's corner insets, right? There's just different places to put this, right? And then I can change the size, up the size, right? And then I can even make a third if I wanted to, right? So I can say 3, and now it's got 3, right? Again, I want only 2 of them. Okay, so I want them, that looks good. I want those to sit there. Okay, and now what I want to do is let's size it down a little bit. I think they're a little too big. Yeah, I'm gonna go, they're a little too big. I'm gonna go a little bit smaller. Something more in that world. Okay. And then I'm gonna say, all right, let's go now and add another cylinder. Okay, so when you guys do that, it deletes the cylinders we've been working on. Right? So this is the advantage now of me. I want to use the same faces, but create a different nano. Right? I want to create a different one right now. Okay? So I'm going to hold the shift key when I draw this out. Okay? So again, when you're drawing out, we're replacing. If you hold the shift key, you can add another nano to your surface here, right? And so now I'm going to say, let's do, okay, it's different size. Let's get that offset to 0 again. And see, these are different size because what I want to do is I want to tile, let's tile 3 times. And let's go, and then now these are getting too small. And then how many of these do I want going across? Let's do, I think, maybe 5. Looks good. This is what I love about Nano. Okay, I'm going to go with 5. I'm going to size them up a little bit more. And then now again, this is where this stuff comes into play, right? Where you can do just along the border only, right? So now it's only going along the border, right? And if you don't tile this, right? If you tile 2 of them, like you can get something like that. And I got 5 now, 2, and then 5. And then now all these are going to give you different results, right? So you have different control. So you could even, if you wanted to, right, you could just do a grid like this, let's say, and let's not do 2 along the H. Let's just, as an example, okay, and then I can say, let's offset these, right, in a different offset, right? So you can go along the X. So I'm going to go, let's go -3. No, let's go -4. Yep. And then offset along the Y maybe this way, right? So you see you can offset these in different ways, right? And then size them down if you want to, size them up. So you have all these controls if you want to, right? So I'm just going to stick with this look. Okay? And I'm going to size them down a little bit more. And then let's go to index 1. And now let me size these down. Okay? And now what I have is this repeating pattern, right? Where it's multiple meshes on here. Okay? And I want to now convert these because I'm going to use these to my benefit. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the side panel. So I've got an original side panel. And then for this one, I don't want any of the nano, so I'm just going to delete all. Okay, so I've got the side panel that's by itself, and then now I've got this, right? So I'm going to now go, all right, let's now convert these into meshes. So I'm going to say here 1 to mesh, okay? So 1 to mesh will take 1 nano at a time and convert it, right? So that's what is happening here. So now I converted these cylinders, in essence, to meshes. So here we'll turn off the other like this, right? So I've got now a panel, and so all I want are the cylinders. I don't want anything else. I just want these. Okay, and then I'm going to split those off. Right? And then now, these cylinders, they've got my pattern. Let's go ahead and I'm going to crease them. So it looks more like that. And then now, I'm going to take advantage of live booleans, turn on subtractive, and then there's all the holes. Right? So there's all the holes that I'm making where these chips are going to go into place. Right? So now I have to make, now I need to make the repeating chip, in essence. Okay? So if I want to make this repeating chip, and I'm going to make this in a particular array, right? Because the original one doesn't have the chips on every single slot, and some of the chips are full chip, and some of them are missing the little cover for the chip itself, right? So going back to the original, is what I'm talking about are this, right? So you can see these little chips that I have here. So they're all polygroups. So I can actually, right, look at just those, right? And then you can see they're actually separate pieces. Right? And then now I tell ZBrush, okay, let's go ahead and let's make something that gives me some of this power to control where I want these chips. So let's build another chip. Let's build something a little different, okay? So I'm going to grab a cube. Again, I'm going to switch to this cube. Have no spans. Okay, and let's do the main part of the chip, not the housing or the cover. Okay, I want to have the chip to maybe look like this. Okay. And let's go ahead and say, all right, let's mirror and weld this along the Y. Why, you ask? Because I want an edge right there. Okay. And now let's do a symmetry along the Y. And let's insert a single edge loop and say, let's have a chip do that. Okay. And then now Q mesh, single polygon. Let's have the chip come off the surface like that. I think it's getting a little too thick for me. I'm going to go a lot, not as thick. Okay. Definitely going to go ahead and crease all, drop my crease level, throw on some dynamic. So we start getting something like this. All right. Then I need this in here. Okay. And I know I want to create a housing part. So I'm just going to duplicate this. Because once again, I'm going to reuse this. Now I'm going to insert multiple edge loops. And then I'm going to want these to be different. Right. So let's say something. Yeah, let's go right around in that part of the world. Perfecto. And then now I'm going to say, let's do an inset. Okay. And I'm going to do an inset poly loop. And let's do an inset this way. Perfect. And then now let's go ahead and crease there and there. And let's just crease that. So let's do a crease all, because right now I just want to have everything creased. Perfect. Okay. And then now this polygroup, let's do an inset based by polygroup. And let's this time do each polygon. Let's do an inset. Right. And then now click here. Let's change that polygrouping so you guys can really see what's going on here. Okay. And I'm going to do a Q mesh polygroup flat island and give this a little lip here and do the same thing there. And then Q mesh polygroup all, push this down. I know it's rocket science that I'm doing here. Turn on dynamics, crease all, and then there you go. Now I've got that little chip off and running. Chip, not Chip from Sleeping Beauty. I mean Sleeping Beauty. Beauty and the Beast. And then I'm gonna, let's see, what does that look like? Yeah, I think I'm going to uncrease partial this outer edge here. this edge right here. I'm going to uncrease that. Let's see what that looks like. And then maybe even do the same there. And do the same there. And there. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that too. Soften it up a little bit. Okay. Perfect. Okay. I'm going to make this now one polygroup. This is very important. Okay. I want that to be one polygroup now. Okay, because I'm going to take advantage of the polygrouping. Okay, as we go along here. I am using a Cintiq. I'm using the 32 inch right now. The partial edge looping, just so since I used it, since you're asking. Here, let me undo this. Okay? So the difference between if I'm creasing partial edge loop, if I click this, notice that only these edges along the same plane of edges are deselected as creased. You see these edges right here are still creased. And these edges right here are still creased. A partial doesn't turn a corner. It's the easiest way I can explain it, right? You do a complete edge loop, you're allowing it to turn the corner. See? It turned the corner and went. So that edge loop is seeing this as the edge loop. This direction, right? From above. This is the edge loop that it's seeing. So I only want to do a part of that edge loop. So I only want to do any edge that right now, that white one I'm hovering over, all the edges along that. Okay? It's partial. I only want partially uncreasing. Right? And then see, boom, and then see the bottom is still creased. That's what partial is. Does that help explain it for you? Hopefully, that should definitely give you the understanding of it. If not, I'm tapped out of ways to explain it. Okay, cool. Perfect, Wintry Snowman. I always love your name, Wintry Snowman. Okay, so now let's continue. Again, I'm going to make this one polygroup. Let's go back to this, right? And then now let's make the chip. And see, I don't have all these spans here. So again, the only thing I care about are those faces. Okay? So I'm going to deselect everything but those two faces. And let's go ahead and delete hidden. Right? And then now let's just Q-mesh and give this some thickness. Let's go ahead and crease it all. Let's look at this soft, i.e. dynamic subdiv. Okay, now let's turn this on. Okay, and let's have a little bit more fun with this chip. In essence, this is obviously the bottom part's the male, and the chip I'm making now. I'm sorry, the bottom part's the female, and now I'm making the male part of the chip, right? Let's have a little more fun with this. So let's go ahead and mirror and weld this along the X. No, I'm sorry, along the Z. Okay, going back to crease partial. I want more roundness to mine. Let's go ahead now and symmetrically insert a single edge loop now. And let me watch it getting the roundness that I want. That's good there. And good there. Okay, maybe I want something like that. Let's, you know what? Let's throw a little extra. I'm going to throw a little extra on this. Let's go ahead and crease these. And let's actually slide these further apart. Something more like, let's do something more like that. Yeah. And a little bit more tighter. A little bit something more like that. And let's add a nice little element here. Okay. So let's go ahead now and insert. Let's insert an edge loop there. And let's crease that edge loop. And then let's do another insert edge loop. All right, I'm on face. Let's put another one there. And then now let's do add to curve. So let's add these curves. And let's add that one. Let's add that one. And unfortunately, this is not symmetrical. So I do need to click on these if I want them symmetrical. Although I can, of course, use mirror and welding to solve all this. And then now let's go ahead and let's just select dynamic. Let's change the bevel. Let's put a little bevel on our chips. Chips! And let's go ahead and increase by the old PG. Right? The old Paul Gaboury, i.e. polygrouping. And then I want that creased as well. And I want that creased as well. So now I get something like, whoops, like that. It's like, see that? That's going to make a difference, right? Especially from a distance. That's going to help at render time. That's going to make a little bit of difference in there, right? Okay, so again, I'm going to make this all one polygroup, right? And then now this is my chip. Okay, so I got this one and I got this one, right? So I don't need dynamic subdiv on for these. And what I'm going to do now is merge these together. Wait, your question, why crease edge loops that aren't on the edge? Because I knew when I made this, when I was going to make this, I knew I wanted this edge to stay very firm and I didn't want it to soften. And I knew I was going to do this also. That's why I creased them. I knew what I was going to do. I like to say low polygon modeling and actually modeling in general or sculpting. It's like playing chess. You're doing certain things to make the final action happen. Like you got to do a couple moves ahead to make something happen. Okay. And then now I'm going to merge this down. So let's go ahead and merge down. So it's all one piece. Okay. Again, 2 polygroups. Let's go ahead and make this now a nano. So I'm looking straight on this. Boom. Brush. I got to first create. I'll go up here. I got to create an insert mesh brush first. I'm going to say new. And then brush. Create nano. And then now this is a nano. Let's go back to what we've been making. Go back to this, right? And then now this. Nano. Polygroup all. And then now just draw this out. Okay. And now I have something like this. And then this is the beauty of nano is I want to go now and do some editing. So right now I don't want it rotated. I want it rotated exactly 90 degrees. Okay. I need some offset in the Z. Right? And I'm going to make my size 1. So it becomes huge, but I'm going to make it fill. And you know what? I'm going to go just a tad bit smaller to start putting a little bit of gap in there. 0.95. Let's see. Yeah, I like that gap. That gap looks good to me. Right? So now these are all fitting based upon the polygon. Okay. You got to create an insert mesh brush first, Robert, then create it and turn it into a nano. Okay. So the reason why I'm doing this is now, like I said, these chips need to be different. So now that I have this is exactly what I want. And now the beauty of this, right? When I go to one to mesh this, okay, and now they are converted. They're no longer instances, right? So now let's separate the panel again from the nanos that I've made. So I'm going to split this off. And now I've got these chips, right? Like this, but I have the ability, right, to look at just one part of it or the other part of it because of the polygrouping I've done. Right? So for me, the next stage would have been, okay, what do I want now to have happen is this. I want to now separate all of these. And then now these ones are, and of course I could have done this by one nanomesh at a time. Let's say top top chip. I don't know. I just, whatever name right now. It doesn't really matter for what I'm doing right now. I'm going to say main chip. Okay. And then now, what we can do is I can now say, all right, there needs to be randomness here. I don't want to necessarily have all these chips showing. Okay. So now that I have real topology, I can go to ZBrush. Okay. And I can do this two different ways. Okay. I can come here to polygrouping and do an auto group. And then I choose which ones, like by hiding and showing, like this, right? Okay. But there is even another way to do this. Okay. So I can turn on dynamic even if I want to. And I'm going to go now to just use, I'm going to continue using ZModeler, use delete, and this time I'm going to use delete island. And I'm going to say, okay, I don't want that one, right? I don't want, just for the sake of time, I don't want that one, I don't want that one, I don't want that one, I don't want that one. Okay, let's skip one here. I don't want one there. Let's do one here. Now I'm just tapping on these chips where I don't want them. Right? So you can see how easy this is. Again, like playing chess, right? I'm setting myself up for where I'm going. Okay? And then now I do this same process for the other ones. For the other ones that I split off. These guys. Right? So I can't have it there. Can't have it there, can't have it there, can't have it there, can't have it there. Don't want any there, don't want any there, don't want there, don't want there, don't want there. There. And then now let's sporadically add and show the main chip housing again, right? So maybe I'll do a couple of those. Maybe a row is missing there. Maybe a few there. Doing some random odd numbers. And then this is you can't get really any easier, right? And then there you go. Now you got randomness where you've got the holes where the chip connects. Then we've got the main housing of the chip and then the chip itself, right? So I've got ways for me as an artist to try different stuff out. That's Live Boolean's giving me that problem. Okay? So just an example of using that nano, okay, to go and get me that result. I'm not unselecting, Robert. I'm deleting. I'm deleting those chips from this subtool, right? So I'm literally clicking on it because I'm using ZModeler with the delete option and island. Each one of these chips are their own island. They're their own shells. This is not welded with this. This is not welded with this. They're their own island. Okay? So this, I'm just clicking and it deletes it. See, it's gone. It's deleted. Right? Some of you might have done it this way, where you go to auto polygroup, and now see each one of these have their own polygroup. Then you could just do this, and now you just hide the ones you don't want. And then you go to geometry and you do delete hidden. I'm eliminating that process, in essence. And even though that they're all the same polygroup, I'm using islands to do this. Right? And I'm just clicking based upon the island, boom, and then deleting those. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Because I don't want them anyway, so I'm just deleting. But it was easier for me using Nano to just give me them all, and then visually I can do this and see how does that look. Right? And this is also going to allow me, there's multiple of these mouse droids, rolling around on the Death Star. Right? Not all of them are going to have the chips looking the same. Some of them might not have any chips. Right? So this gives me the ability to make multiple variations of this little mouse droid that we have, that we're building here. And this is what they're saying right now. Some of them are saying these little details, what makes the differences. Okay? So the last thing that I probably would want to do is render this out. So we're running out of time, but I wanted to take a moment to also render this. So I want to have the ability now to make the final one you know, have a little bit of fun with the rendering, right? So in ZBrush, okay, it's not a photorealistic render, but I can do some fun stuff, especially MPR, right? And one of the questions that did come up was how to use the filter system with inside of ZBrush, okay? So that did come up for us, right? So I'm going to move the floor grid up because we got a low-hanging fruit subtool. So I'm going to draw, okay, and my elevation. Let's just bring it up. Okay, and I don't want it cutting here. I'm going to come out of perspective. I don't want the floor grid going through the tire. Because if you do, by the way, when you go to render, that tire will get clipped from the floor. So in essence, you can make this look like it's sitting, right, in something. So if I make this elevation sit more like right here, and then render this out, like I don't need live booleans for this one. Render that out. Right? Where this floor grid sits is going to be important to us. Because obviously that's the shadows that's being casted on this model. Right? So I want to be able to control that. So I'm going to go perspective. And again, actually I'm going to come out of perspective and let's put that floor grid. Let's elevation. By default, -1 will snap to the lowest subtool. Okay, that's what it's going to do. Right? Then I can click snap and then just snap to it. Right? Because that's about where I want it to live. Okay? And so now, let's get a little bit of render going. Let's say this. Let's render that out. Yeah, I would add scratches and stuff sculpturally, for sure. Okay, let's go ahead and dock the renderer. Okay, so first things first, let's play a little bit with the shadows. So the floor strength's pretty strong, so I'm going to knock that down to 0.6. Let's knock the shadowing down on the model to 0.5. Shift R, re-render. Okay, there. So now I can kind of make out more what's happening in here on the model. And then the floor isn't so dark. Okay, that's looking better. For the sake of this, let's make him be a little bit darker. Okay, that looks better. All right, and then now this is where some fun comes into play with looking at what we can do with some filtering. Right? So this is where the filter system, for me, is a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun doing an MPR type of render in here. So our goal will be like this. If we go to our filters, if I want this to say look like just a blueprint of him, I can now just double click on this, and then there's a blueprint image look of my mouse droid. Okay? To export a Nanomesh out of ZBrush, you have to convert it. So you just convert it to topology, and then it's just like any topology. It's topology, and you export it. Right? So what I want to do is start doing some fun things like this, and making a render come to life a little bit more. That's a little fun. You know, even doing just making it look like a line kind of artwork. Right? I know we're all big fans of chromatic aberration. Right, there's a bunch of different ones in here. Here's a pixel-driven one, so it'll make it look pixelated. Old school Nintendo, right? So I want to start using and taking advantage of all of this. Right? So I want to touch briefly on this. I'm going to go back to the default. So once you render, which is Shift-R with BPR, you can have a lot of fun with this. So we don't have a ton of time for me to really dive very, 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 very deep in this, but I want to give you guys the general understanding here of how to use this, okay? And I want to encourage you to play with this, okay? So this looks like a crazy cockpit. Like we're literally in the Millennium Falcon. And I just came from Disneyland this past weekend with my daughter, and it was a lot of fun. 5-year-old sitting there watching her trying to drive the Millennium Falcon was hysterical. So that's what this looks like. You're like, it's like lever, 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 and that's how I felt when I was on the ride. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? So I'm gonna break this down as simple as I can make it, okay, for rendering. If I look at this, okay, and I'm looking at, okay, what is all this doing? This is literally just 2 sections. That's all the filtering system is. It's 2 sections. One section is the filter itself, and the second section is how do I want to, in essence, mask it out, clip it. Like what parts of the model or image do I want filters not to affect? Okay? And I'm going to give you examples to this, all right? So, from the point where it says modifiers and up is dealing with the filter. Okay, so there's only 12 filters allowed. So that's what the F1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 12 is. There's 12 filters that you can apply to the image. And from the modifiers to those numbers, all that is filtering. Obviously, the other stuff is self-explanatory, people. Copy, paste, cut, insert, load, and save. Like those are, I don't need to describe those. So all you got to do is, let's say, okay, I want to put, I don't know, I want some red on this, let's say. So I'm going to click on the circle to open up, and you can see this by default is set to noise, right? So all you do is you click on the closed dot right here, right? This little closed dot, and make it an open dot. That turns it on. And the filter that's selected is the one that's orange. That's the selected filter. So I'm in 1 right now, and so the filter that we have selected is noise. So if you click on it, you can see all the filters that we have now with inside of ZBrush. And I forget where we're at. What are we at? 36? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 times 3, 30, 48. So we have 48 types of different filters in ZBrush. Okay, so as an example, let's colorize. Okay, so this is now colorizing the final image. Okay, and now what color do I want it to be? And again, we're relating this to the filter section. You guys are used to the blend modes. How do I want this colorized to blend with the image now? Okay, like how do I want that to blend with that image? So the next thing I'm going to do is say, I'll keep it replace. And then I want the colorizing to be pretty strong, but let's pick a color and let's make it red. And what's happening now is there's red going everywhere. Okay? So this colorize is just putting more of the red, right? The opacity is self-explanatory. It's opacity of the red. Right? And then this is how much of the red is coming through. This is very different than paint. Paint is like dumping a bucket of paint. Right? You can see everything changes red. Colorize is not the same as paint. It's not working the same. Colorize is using the grayscaling of the render itself to blend with red, right? Paint is just like paint bucket dump. Okay, so I'm going to go back to colorize. So you guys can clearly see what's happening here is I got red. And now I can say is, okay, well, this filter of a colorized red is going everywhere on my image. Now, this is where the rest of the sliders come to life and come into play now. So what do I want to do? I don't want this red going in certain spots. Let's say I don't want the red to go on the model. I want the red to start becoming part of the background. Okay, so there's a masking slider, just like you have a masking ability you would in Photoshop. If I turn this to -1, then the red now only is applied to the background. And you can see the model gets no red at all now. Not one bit, right? And if I go the opposite direction, it's the opposite. The model now gets the red, and the background does not get touched. And then what you can do with this is add a secondary clipping, as I like to call it, or masking to this. So I can say, you know what, Fresnel it. So now the red is only going 100% on the normals that are directly looking at the camera, right? And then the normals that are starting to not look at the camera slowly don't get the red. Obviously, if I go negative, it's the opposite, right? Right? So, sorry, not whatever. Sorry, the normals that are not looking, the normals that are looking at the camera do not get the red. The normals that are not directly looking at the camera look the red. And then obviously I can do the opposite, right? So that's what all these sliders are. They're just some way for us to clip and use what I want to do with this filter. Because maybe I do want a slight of red. Okay, I don't want that much opacity, not that much red. It's almost like I'm creating a little bit of a lighting effect in here. And then let's not go 100%, just slightly throw some red on that. Okay? So now that I have this, I want to continue doing some things. Okay, so let's do an outline edge. Now everywhere here, I'm getting an outline edge. Okay, so this has modifiers. I can do an inner cavity, right? I can do no noise. I can make it thicker on the outside. I can play the roll off, right? And then maybe not that thick. And then the color I use, right? So see, you guys would see it better this way. You can really see what this is doing. So I'm going to go thin, make the fall off a little bit stronger. Do something like that, right? And then now I don't want that to be something like that, right? I can even come in here and say, all right, let's do something else with this. Let's do a blur. This is what I really love about using filters. The filters are all real time as long as you're rendered. Again, you got to have a BPR render done. They're all real time as long as that's rendered. So now I've got a blur. Watch how fast this is to create a depth of field. I'm going to put the blur at 100%, so make everything blurry. And what I'm going to do is change the radius of my blur with the radius slider. So I'm just making a bigger blur, right? So this is pretty blurry now. Like the whole image is pretty blurry. And now what I'm going to tell ZBrush to do, since we're in the world of ZBrush, and I'm not in something like Photoshop where I got to rely on masking out 2D, I have 2D ability in ZBrush and 2.5D, and I have the 3D model. I have the model at my disposal to play with this even as well. So I'm going to use the depth slider here now and filter out the blurring based upon the model's depth itself. So the vertex points that are closest to the camera are 100% in focus, and the vertex points that are further back are not in focus now. And then I can even control this with the depth A's and the depth B's, because that's what's controlling where the blur begins, where it starts to slowly getting blurry, and then when it goes 100% blurry. So depth B is 100% blurry, and anything in between A and B is a transitional blur. So I can click on A and say, okay, I want it to start getting blurry around there, right? And then B, I want it to get really blurry there. Or, you know what? No, let's go with more back there. See? So you can clearly now see the line of blur that's happening there. And then you have a depth roll off, right? That you can control that blur. And then now, honestly, the only problem I have is my radius is just ginormous. If you drop this down to like 2 or 1, there's a depth of field kind of look, right? And it's real time. So I can play with this real time. It's just makes a difference. And then I make another filter and say, all right, let's look at this. Let's see what other filter maybe I want to play with. Posterize. So you got things like this. These are fun. And maybe I want to put this only in the background and only on the shadows in the background. And then I want those to be more repetitive, like that. And then this, I have controls. So I can do a constant width, and I can do inner transparency, outer transparencies. Okay. To play with this, then I can go this route. Maybe I'll go black instead. So they were white, and now I'm making them black. Yeah. So that looks interesting, right? Then I can say, let's filter this. Let's do, this time, let's do dots. And so now I got dots everywhere. Let's just put that only on the model. Okay, let's make the dots smaller. So drop this down a little bit. Okay, and then this also has the same thing. Right, I want to go the dots to be black again. And then outer transparency or inner transparency, constant width of them. There, now they're constant. And, you know, let's have some fun. Let's put that only in the shadows of the model. Right? So now I'm masking the model. So now the ground has horizontal lines and the model shadows have little dots in them. And then let's throw a vignette. Why not? On here. So let's go a little bit darker with our vignette. Something like this. Then let's also throw the radial overlay in here, which is a little bit newer. Let's position this. Right? Let's just reposition this. There we go. Okay. And let's make the radius a little bit bigger. And let's see. Yes. Okay, and then I'm going to Orton it, so just brighten up the model. Let's get a little bit more Orton on the whole render. Right? You can see how quickly we can change up our render. Okay? So that's all I'm doing is using this filter system to do all this. Okay? And if I want to, let's even change up the material to a basic material. And let's have a little bit more fun with this. Let's, what I want material. Let's go to your diffuse. And let's not have any specularity. Right now, let's just knock down the ambient. Let's put our strength at 1. And then now we've got 2 steps. We got like starting to get like a toon shade look. Right? So now we've got a toon shade look. And on top of that, I'm going to make the shadows and the render properties be flat shadows. I don't want the shadows to be completely black. And then render. And then when the render's done, all of my filter kicks in as well now. Right? So you can see all the filtering is kicking in at the same time. Right? And then I can continue doing this as much as I want. I can say, you know what, I want a colorized paint. And I want it to only be in the background. Don't touch the shadows. And now what color do I want this? Pick a color that you want. Right? Again, all real time. Or we take this a different level. Instead of paint, we actually do a texture overlay. Right? And then say texture. And then let's import a texture. Let's see what I have on my computer here. I don't know what cool texture I might have here. Hold on, let me change my... Hold on. Let's see, streaming folder. Where might you live? Wow. I am doing just great today with... There they are. So as an example, for giggles, let's throw the mouse droid image, right? So it looks like wallpaper, right? And I can use any color with this as well, right? And then I can even say less and less and less and less of them, right? And I can knock this down all the way to it'll just be one of them. Okay? So it's a great way, and then I can change this to white. So how many do you want these repeating? In essence, it's just something fun to do in your image, right? And then I can even blur it if I want to, soften it. And again, I'm controlling this by, I'm only letting it go on the background. So this is only going to be on the model. This is only going to be on the background. And then this is saying, I don't want it to go in the shadows. Okay, and then for giggles, let's throw in a 10th filter. That looks pretty cool. Happy accident. Let's do, where are you? Reflect self. So now I'm reflecting in the render. So let me turn this off. Right? You can see the reflection of the model now in the render. Right? And then just saying how much reflection do I want of the model now. Right? That's really, everything's really starting to come together, being a different type of render. Really push my model another level. Mr. Whistles one, there's nothing yet I can share for the summit. Just all I can say is keep an eye on all of our social medias. So again, not understanding this, just keep in mind, these are your filters. What do you want to do to them, right? So if I grab something very extreme, again, right, here, these vertical lines, right, it's very extreme. It's happening to the entire model, right? So I don't know if you're going by Sean Triana or... So this is happening to the whole render in essence, right? This filter is happening to the whole render. So if I want bigger, these vertical lines, they come bigger. If I want them smaller, I drop this and see they become smaller, almost like a TV screen. And it's using the model's information to give me this. Right? So you can see where it's really pure white, those lines aren't there. Okay, so it's using the information on the model because it's doing this, right? It's looking at this stuff. Right? And then I can say outer transparency, inner transparency. It's just looking at the color, where we're at right now, and one of them becoming transparent and not transparent, right? And then now I just say, I only mask it out only on the model. So now it's only happening on the model, okay? And if I don't want it to happen on the shadows, I put my shadows on -1, and now it's not happening on the shadows. If I only want it on the background, you do the opposite. Put it on mask -1, and then 0, right? Means put it on the shadows in the background. If I do a -1, right? Then it's not going on the shadows also that are on the background. Okay? So that's what you have to try doing. Right? I'm telling you, the more you experiment, the more you have fun with it, the better off you're going to be. Okay? So unfortunately, this is all I have time for today. But hopefully you guys had some fun taking the project that I've been working on here with this for answering your questions. For you guys coming again. Again, we're using hashtag #AskZBrush on Twitter. I'm looking there to get questions. Obviously, our support, Discord. I get them from everywhere, but this is the best place to ask a question if you want to try and get answered in a stream that I'm doing. It's hashtag #AskZBrush. Okay? So... there you go. There's making the little Star Wars mouse droid, using Nanomesh to create this, using some ZModeler, bringing in some reference imaging. So obviously we didn't have time to go through the entire thing today, but you guys get the idea here. It's pretty simple. Everything on this guy is ZModeler and then Nanomesh. That's it. I literally used 2 features to make this, and then live booleans. That's it. There's only 3 features used to make this entire model. And live boolean is only to make the cutout for the wheels. That's it. Nothing else. All right. So thanks for joining me. Keep an eye on our calendar as always. Right? I'm seeing who's up next. This channel is constantly live every single day practically. I usually stream every Friday at this time I'm saying 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is usually when I go. But if you guys aren't aware, we have ZBrushLive.com, and you can go to calendars and you can see who's coming up either in this direction agenda, or you can have a calendar. And any one of these you guys can click. So anything where there's a red dot, that's where somebody's going to be streaming. So if you go to the 5th, if you want to be reminded about Thomas Whittlebach, you click on it, right? And it'll go to that stream, and you can get a reminder email right here. And we'll send a reminder email 24 hours before the stream and an hour before the stream. Okay? So this is a great spot for you guys to get reminders and sign up from streams. So as you guys can see, if you go every Friday, right now, you can see all the streams that are happening every Friday. Okay? So this has been Paul Gaboury with Pixologic for another Ask ZBrush live stream. Thank you all for coming and tuning in. Have a wonderful holiday weekend for those that are in the United States and Canada. Canada's Independence Day was yesterday, so to Canadians in here and to the U.S., happy Independence Day to all you Canadians and Americans. Enjoy your holiday weekend. The rest of you, we'll see you. Thank you so much.